Hello. In this video, I present the process, often called the workflow, for using registration memory to create, save, recall, and play musical arrangements on the Yamaha PSR-SX900 and 900 keyboards. Registration memory is this row of buttons right here. Very well identified. The meaning of the word arrangement depends on context. Essentially, it represents the orchestral color and variety that I apply to a performance. And on these instruments, there are many ways of doing it. I could, for example, just turn the instrument on, select a certain accompaniment style and tempo on the left, then load up the treble voice buttons, officially called Right 1, Right 2, and Right 3, with some preferred orchestral sounds. Then press the accompaniment button, the sync start button, and finally start playing, in which case I would activate different style variations and treble voices by pressing the appropriate buttons as I went along. Or I could take advantage of the one-touch feature, in which case I would press particular one-touch buttons at the appropriate times as I play. In either case, the orchestral variety of my performance would be determined mainly by me myself pressing certain buttons, and I would have to remember for each song that I play which buttons activate which particular sounds and orchestral variations that I wanted my performance to have. And theoretically, I could call my performance an arrangement of the song. But when I talk about arrangements on modern electronic instruments, I really mean something different. I'm talking about predefining the orchestral variety of a song that I wish to play into separate parts and assigning those parts to the various registration memory buttons, which collectively are called a registration bank, such that 1, I can more easily switch between them as I play, and 2, I no longer have to remember what exact instrument sound or keyboard feature each button represents. This is a huge difference that makes my performance much easier to play. Rather than having to mentally keep track of which instrument's sounds and features to activate, I now view my performance more simply as consisting of a series of parts. Part 1, Part 2, and so on. Just to be clear, let me repeat. This saves me, as I play, from having to remember 2 things. 1, what particular instrument sound did I originally intend to use in each part of the song? Maybe a violin here, a clarinet there. And 2, where would those sounds be located on the instrument's front grille? Maybe a particular right button. Maybe a one-touch button. And if so, which one? Who knows? I can never remember such things. Further, by using registration memory, I can organize the parts of my performance in a more logical, sequential manner, helping me remain constantly aware of my progress as I play. I simply look at the buttons to see which one is currently active. If I see the third button is lit, I know immediately that I'm playing the third part of the song. But wait, there's even more. I'm also talking about activating the various parts of my performance as I play by repetitively pressing a single foot pedal. Thus, I can deliver the entire performance without even having to take my fingers off the keys. This allows me to accomplish orchestral changes much more quickly than I otherwise could. And finally, and this for me is at the very heart of what I consider an arrangement on an electronic instrument like this to be. I'm talking about saving all those parts collectively to storage, to either internal user memory or external USB flash drive memory, as a registration bank file for recall at some later time to be played on an as-desired basis. I'm talking about a file that contains all of the different instrument selections and adjustments that I made when I originally orchestrated the song in my music room. When Glenn Miller, a master arranger, wanted his band to play a particular arrangement of Song of India, for example. He gave the band members sheet music that he had prepared in his music room, sheet music dictating to the various instrument musicians exactly how to play their part in the total performance. When I think of an arrangement of a song on my SX900, I think of a registration bank file that dictates all orchestral parts of my performance of that song that I should activate at the appropriate times as I play. I'm talking here, of course, about formal orchestration, as opposed to playing interactively, on the fly, picking various orchestral sounds at random, as a jazz player would, which is another style of playing altogether. Now, I'm not a master orchestrator. I'm just an average guy, a music hobbyist. And yet, with a modern arranger keyboard like this, I'm able to easily create plenty of audience-pleasing performances out of even very simple songs. In the rest of this video, I will go through the complete workflow, step by step, from start to finish, of the arrangement of a very simple beginner-level practice piece. And in the process, I'll take advantage of registration memory to introduce some novel arrangement ideas. Ideas that you may never have thought of before. Ideas that are not practical, or in some cases even possible to accomplish using the one-touch system. I chose as an example the well-known tune called Lightly Row. In almost every beginner-level piano method book, it's played something like this. And now here's the same piece after I arranged it on my SX900. Obviously, an arranger can provide great enhancement to your music. Now, the example that you just heard provides a lot of orchestral changes. For example, I'm changing accompaniment and treble voices almost every second phrase. Maybe you think it's a bit too much? Well, there are reasons. First of all, this is an example to help you learn as much as possible within the short time frame of a single video about the workflow required to create orchestral variety in your own arrangements. So with that in mind, I've packed a lot into it. But secondly, it turns out that making very frequent accompaniment and voice changes like that is a legitimate orchestration technique. Have you ever heard the expression, playing music is like having a conversation? A lot of music, and this piece is a good example, can enhance that effect by frequently changing voices that sometimes seem to talk back and forth to each other. Other times, talk together to the listening audience. Sometimes seemingly in agreement, sometimes in disagreement. It gives one the feeling of being at a Thanksgiving dinner in a large chatty family, don't you think? It's a technique that you see folk singing groups do all the time. Personally, I think it's something that people who play arranger keyboards like this one should do more often. And yet, I agree that like almost all things in music, one must be careful not to overdo it. But first, I need to make sure that both our instruments begin at the same starting point. Hence, I will ask you to clear out your registration memory. If you have anything valuable in registration memory, please back it up at this time. A reliable way to clear registration memory is to turn the power off. And then to turn it back on, only this time holding down the second to last note on the keyboard, the highest B note. Hold the key down until the instrument has completely booted up. Whereas before, my registration memory buttons were all lit up, now they're all dark, indicating that they contain no data. Of course, before arranging any song, one must first audition various candidate accompaniment styles and treble voices, and that process can take a while. Also, even after the various parts of an arrangement are laid out, there's a period of time when one fiddles with them in order to optimize the performance. I've already done that for my arrangement of the song Lightly Raw, and that experience has given me a good understanding of the total workflow for creating any arrangement. Hence, in order to save you some time and effort, I can now present the total workflow to you. Had I discovered a video like this one made by someone else when I first got my instrument, I'm sure I'd have gotten much further ahead on it a lot faster. I encourage you to follow me each step along the way by pausing the video and making the entries yourself on your own instrument. That exercise should help you master the basic workflow for creating song arrangements in registration memory more quickly than working on your own, as I had to do. Also, I'm hoping that this video will convince more keyboard players that using registration memory for creating and playing song arrangements allows me to produce better performances than other methods, like the one-touch system, for example. Starting with the accompaniment style for part 1, I press the ballroom category button in the style area on the front grille. It's to the left of the touchscreen. This causes the accompaniment style display window to appear on the touchscreen. I press tab number 2. I then select Foxtrot by tapping it on the touchscreen. I notice that the tempo is 180 beats per minute, which you will see happens to be appropriate for the song Lightly Raw. How convenient. I now close the accompaniment style display window by pressing on the X icon in the top right corner. It's like closing Windows on your computer. Next, I make sure the part on-off button for upper part voice right 1 is lit, meaning that it is active. Actually, it looks more like orange to me than red, but the owner's manual says it's red, so I'll call it red also. If on your instrument either of the part on-off buttons for voices right 2 or right 3 are lit red, push them to turn them off. I intend to start my performance using only a single treble or upper part voice. Then I press the part select button for upper part voice right 1. This causes the voice selection display window to appear on the touchscreen. I then activate the woodwind category, which I can do by pressing the appropriate voice category button to the right of the touchscreen. I could have also done it by tapping the appropriate icon at the left side of the touchscreen itself. I select for right 1 the sound Big Band Sax. I now close the window. To try the selections that I've made so far, I activate the accompaniment button at the far left portion of the style control area. It's the one labeled ACMP, short for accompaniment. A lot of Roland players have trouble initially on Yamaha keyboards figuring that one out. I also make sure that the fill-in button, immediately to the right of the accompaniment button, is also lit red. Then, a little bit to the right of that, I activate Main Variation B. Then, in the right portion of the style control area, I activate the Sync Start button. That will make the auto accompaniment start as soon as I press a key on the left side of the keyboard. I then play. Pretty good, don't you think? This is one of those rare times when the default levels are already correct. I now activate intro number 2, and I reactivate sync start. It's time now to assign these selections to register button number 1, a process that Yamaha calls registering my selections. To do that, I press the memory button at the left of the registration memory area, right here. The instrument's touchscreen displays a bunch of item selections that relate to the kind of data that I may want to include. There's no need to lose time over this. Just accept the instrument's default. To verify that both our instruments are the same, all items on my screen have a check mark except for line out, MIDI song, audio song, text, assignable buttons, and vocal harmony / mic settings. I now press register button number 1. Notice that it lit up red, indicating that it both contains data and is currently active. Ta-da! So you see, the assignment procedure is very short. I first pressed the memory button, then the register button to which I wish to assign my current instrument selections. Or in Yamaha language, the register button to which I want my current instrument selections to be registered. Register button number 1 now represents part 1 of my arrangement of the song, Lightly Roll. Pretty easy, don't you think? Now for part 2. Here I introduce the first of my promised novel ideas. Most people, when they play using auto accompaniment, use one particular accompaniment style for the entire song, pressing the variation buttons at different times as desired. And on many arranger keyboard models that I've used in the past, I was limited to that because those instruments were incapable of loading into memory different accompaniment styles in real time as I play. But the SX900 can. So why don't I take advantage of that? By doing so, I can add a lot more accompaniment variety to my performance. But I must do so intelligently. I can't pick something that is so different from what I'm already using in part 1 that it doesn't blend in well. I once again activate the ballroom style selection display. And wouldn't you know it, the very next style, called Swing Fox, is an excellent candidate. I pick it. But look, the tempo is different. It's set for 192. No problem, just reduce it to 180. The tempo buttons are on the front grille to the left of the touchscreen. I will keep style main variation at B. For treble voices, I'll keep voice right 1 as big band sax from the woodwind category, but I'll also add another voice. I now press the upper part on-off button for voice right 2. Both the on-off and the part select buttons for right 2 light up red, but I need to press the part select button for the voice selection display window to appear on the touchscreen. I'll assign to upper part right 2 big band trumpet from the brass category. I make sure both voice buttons are on. I'm now layering 2 voices. Let me try it out as I did when I was setting up part 1 of my performance. As expected, it doesn't sound well balanced. That's actually normal. Indeed, it's not likely that the default levels of the instrument's various voices and styles, when picked at random, will be appropriately set to blend well together. Hence, on any such instrument, I need to make a mixer adjustment. There are 2 ways to get there. I can press the mixer button on the front grille. It's to the left of the touchscreen, just one row down from the tempo buttons. Or I can pick Mixer from the menu that is available in the voice selection display. The Mixer display appears on the touchscreen. All sound drawbars are set to a default value of 100. To make adjustments, I tap on whatever mixer channel drawbar I want to adjust, and then use the rotary control to precisely specify the value. I adjust right 1 to 95. And right 2 to 80. But now, because I've got two treble voices working, I'd like to increase the volume of the accompaniment to 115. Let me try playing again. I don't know if you agree, but that sounds better to me. I can now assign my selections to register button number 2, which I do by pressing the memory button followed by register button number 2. Notice how register number 2 is red and register number 1 is now blue. This means that both registers contain data and register 2 is the currently active one. There, I'm done with part 2 of my arrangement. Let me again go back to the main display. I'm assuming you're getting the hang of this and you'd like to see me move a little more quickly. For part 3, I'll make the accompaniment go back to foxtrot. And I'll leave the main variation at B. For treble voices, I will keep big band sax for right 1, big band trumpet for right 2, and then assign jazz scat vocals from the choir and pad category to right 3. I'll also verify that all 3 treble voices are currently active. I'm now layering 3 voices together. For mix adjustments, I'll keep right 1 at 95, right 2 at 80, but I'll adjust right 3 to 127. That's the max. And because I've got 3 upper part voices working, I'll also increase the style volume to 127. Also the max. To complete my assignment, I press the memory button followed by register button number 3. Let me again go back to the main display. In part 4 of my performance, I switch once again from accompaniment style foxtrot to swing fox. And this time I increase the style variation to D. I mustn't forget to set the tempo to 180. And now I introduce another novel idea, using an intro in the middle of a performance. I don't see many keyboard players utilizing this capability. Yet by doing so, I can make the instrument produce a nice musical bridge between 2 sections of a piece, like when I want to play a repeat, as I will be doing here. And as far as I know, this is only possible when formally arranging a song as a registration bank, as I am currently doing. So, for part 4, I activate intro number 3. For treble side voices, I assign clarinet and flutes from the woodwind category to voice right 1. And I keep big band trumpet at voice right 2. Finally, I turn off right 3. I'm now back to layering 2 voices again. For mix adjustments, I make right 1 127 and right 2 100. I also lower the style volume to 100. I now press the memory button followed by register button number 4. Wow, part 4 of my song arrangement is done. I'm really moving right along, aren't I? Let me again go back to the main display. In part 5, I once again switch accompaniment styles back to foxtrot. This time with style variation set to D. For treble voices, I'll keep the clarinet and flutes at voice right 1, but I'll change voice right 2 to sweet trombone from the brass category. I'll keep voice right 3 off. In this part, I'm layering only 2 voices. For mix adjustments, I'll keep right 1 at 127 and adjust right 2 for 95. I'll also adjust the style volume to 115. I'm now done with part 5. I press the memory button followed by register 5. Let me again go back to the main display. In part 6, I switch the accompaniment style back to swing fox variation D. And adjust the tempo to 180. I keep clarinet and flutes for voice right 1 and sweet trombone for voice right 2, but I assign to upper part voice right 3 the sound called doobie doobie from the choir and pad category. I make sure all voice on-off buttons are on. I'm now layering 3 voices again. For mix adjustment, I set voice 1 to 110. Voice right 2 to 90. And voice right 3 to 127. Finally, I increase the style volume to 127. I now register my selections by pressing the memory button followed by register number 6. Let me again go back to the main display. Just one more to go. I switch the accompaniment style back to foxtrot. And I activate ending number 3. I can turn off all upper part voices 1, 2, and 3. They won't be needed. This part is just an ending. And so that the ending is not too loud, I adjust the style volume to 100. I press the memory button followed by register number 7. Let me again go back to the main display.
If you followed along with me every step of the way, I need to warn you that when I was entering part 5, I may have forgotten to tell you to turn off the intro 3 that was used in part 4. Hence, your part 5 may have an active intro button. But it's no big deal. Just activate register number 5 and look to see if the intro button is lit red. If it is, just press it to deactivate it, and then re-register. That is, press the memory button followed by register number 5. Check if the same is true for part 6. You may also have noticed that when I was setting up part 7, register number 7's button on my instrument was already lit blue. That's because I had made a mistake when I entered it the first time, and I had to correct myself. I needed to repeat that scene. I apologize if I made any other mistakes or omissions, or in any way caused confusion. But the fact is, we all make mistakes. That's part of the creative process. If I did make any more mistakes, I hope you can correct them. Besides, making corrections to the parts of an arrangement is something that you must feel comfortable with if you plan to start creating your own musical arrangements on one of these instruments. So maybe it's a good thing that I gave you a little extra practice, don't you think?
Although at this point in my presentation, I'm done assigning all my desired orchestration selections to the register buttons, my work is not yet complete. For example, what about saving? All of my entries are currently in the instrument's active memory. And yes, it is true that that memory is non-volatile. That is, even if I turn my instrument off, I won't lose my work. My instrument will remember everything that I assign to registration memory the next time I turn it on. However, if ever I load into registration memory a new registration bank file from storage, one representing the arrangement of another song, or if I clear registration memory to start creating the arrangement of a different song, I'll lose everything. To prevent that disaster from happening, I need to save my current registration bank to storage. To save a registration bank, I must first activate the registration bank selection display, which I can do by pressing simultaneously the registration memory plus and minus buttons. Note that at this time I do not have a USB flash drive plugged into the instrument, and I have nothing yet saved in my instrument's user memory. I'm intentionally doing this in order to keep my demonstration as simple as possible. I want it to appear like I'm using a brand new instrument. Hence, the display is essentially blank, showing that no registration files have yet been saved. I now pick the File icon at the top of the display, the one that looks like a little folder. A dialog box appears, giving me an opportunity to accomplish some standard file management operations. I pick the Save operation. Now, this is the part that was confusing me the first time that I did it. The display seems to go back to what it was before, accomplishing nothing. It made me wonder, have I already saved? If so, where the heck is it? But wait, look in the top right corner. There's now a button called Save Here. So I now understand that I have not yet saved. I tap on that button. Aha! Now a QWERTY keyboard appears, giving me an opportunity to name my registration bank file. Notice that it already contains the name New Bank. That's the name it gave to my registration bank when I cleared it out earlier. I touch and hold for a second the Delete key, and the name New Bank disappears. I then enter my song's name, Lightly Roll. There. Finally, I tap on the OK key in the bottom right corner of the touchscreen's keyboard. Voila! I have just saved my registration bank representing my arrangement of the song, Lightly Roll, to user memory. I congratulate myself, but it's still too soon to go to the fridge and get a beer. At this point, I could actually play the performance by pressing the various register buttons in sequence myself at the appropriate times as I play. But even though the registration buttons are close to the keys, I don't have sufficient playing skill to accomplish that to tempo. I need the aid of a foot pedal. Yamaha recommends a particular pedal that they make, but almost any pedal will do. Look, I'm using a pair of standard Boss FS5U pedals. These are as common as chocolate candy. Look, they fit together and come apart, so you can make a strip out of them. I connect the pedals to the appropriate receptacles on the instrument using standard 1/4-inch audio cables. So now I want to configure my pedals so that they will help me advance through the register buttons of an arrangement that I have previously saved as a registration bank, and that I also have active in registration memory, which is the case right now for my newly created arrangement of Lightly Roll. Well, the first place I looked to try to do this was the assignable menu. I can get to it directly by tapping the assignable icon at the very bottom of the main display on the touch screen. Or I can press the menu button to the right of the touch screen and tap the assignable icon button on the touch screen itself. The assignable menu display window appears, but as I eventually found out, although it was good that I came here first, this assignable menu is actually not where I get the pedal to control the register buttons while playing an arrangement. It's where I'm supposed to configure the pedals to operate on a global basis, outside of the instrument's registration memory feature, for more traditional operations like a sustain or damper pedal when playing the instrument as a standard piano. Still, like I just said, it was a good thing that I came here because it turns out that I really should do this first. You can see that on my instrument, pedal number 1 has been assigned to operate as the sustain feature of a standard piano. This is actually the default for that pedal. So I didn't have to configure it myself to accomplish that. Yamaha did it for me. But pedal number 2 I did configure myself to operate as the organ rotary operation. You could do the same, or perhaps if you like to play traditional piano often, you'd prefer that pedal number 2 operate as a sostenido, assuming that you're familiar with what that is. But whatever you choose for pedal number 2, I recommend that it's something that you're familiar with and can easily test to see if it works. There's no sense going forward if you have not yet proved to yourself that your pedals actually work. To choose an available operation to assign to the pedal, I just tap on it twice. And a pop-up menu of standard operations will appear. I will leave it to you to accomplish that before we go forward with configuring the pedals to control the sequence of an arrangement in registration memory. There's even a second good reason for configuring your pedals now in the assignable menu before progressing, but I'll wait till later to tell you when you will more easily understand the reason why. With that global pedal configuration and confirmation work completed, I can now focus on getting my pedals to control the register buttons of my Lightly Roll arrangement in registration memory. It turns out that there's another menu devoted exclusively for that purpose. It's a menu that contains a switch that allows me, for the case of playing arrangements in registration memory, to, on an as-needed basis, override the global definitions that you just saw. That menu is appropriately called the registration sequence menu. To get to it, I tap on the Regist sequence icon on the touchscreen. There wasn't enough room in the button for Yamaha to display the full name registration sequence, so they shortened the word registration to Regist. This opens the registration sequence window display, which you see now. There are two sections to this window. The top section contains an on-off button, which by default is turned off. This is the switch that I was talking about that I can use to override those previous global definitions. This top section of the display window also contains configuration for how I want each pedal to step through my arrangement, either forward or backwards. On mine, pedal 1 will go forward, pedal 2 backwards. The bottom section is where I enter the actual pedal sequence that I want the pedals to follow when I'm performing the piece. Since I've assigned the various orchestral parts of my performance of Lightly Row sequentially in order, I will enter the sequence 1 through 7 in the same sequential order. I press register number 1, then I tap on the insert icon on the touchscreen. The number gets entered. I then press register button number 2, and again I tap on the insert icon. And again the number gets inserted. I continue in the same manner until I've entered all 7. You now see the actual sequence that the pedal will follow. But in fact, although I had good reason for wanting the various parts of my arrangement to be played in sequential order, theoretically, I don't really have to. I could, if I wanted, tell the pedal to jump around in any order. That is, I could design each of my song arrangements such that each one uses its own unique sequence of registration button selections. But for now, I'll keep it sequential and simple. Now, this next step is important. You see at the far right the little box that says Stop. That's where I'm supposed to specify what I want the pedal to do when it gets to the end of my performance. If I leave it at the default value, Stop, then when I finish playing my arrangement, the pedal will stop working. Most people don't want that. Indeed, the first time that I confronted that and realized that my pedal was no longer working, I thought my instrument was hung up. So I turned the power off and turned it back on again to reboot. It took me a while to realize that it was all because of me failing to tell my pedal what to do when it completed the sequence. When I tap on the word Stop, it changes to Top. That specifies to the pedal that when it gets to the end of the sequence, it should return to the beginning of the performance. It's like the orchestra conductor who says, "Okay, gang, let's take it from the top." Another possible selection here is an operation called Next. I'll say more about that in a bit. For my arrangement of Lightly Row, I want to leave this set to Top. Now, here's the part that for me was important to understand. The sequence that I just entered is not global data, like the pedal assignments of sustain and rotary that I accomplished in my instrument's assignable menu. This sequence pertains to my current arrangement, Lightly Row, and hence this information must somehow be saved to my registration bank file. Makes sense, doesn't it? Think about it. Since different arrangements can, if I want them to, activate the various register buttons in any sequence, then how could the pedals possibly know what to do in each case if that information wasn't saved as part of the registration bank file? Well, that's the purpose of this little hard disk with the down arrow on it at the right edge of the screen. Right there. Notice also that the name of my arrangement, Lightly Row, appears as well, to the left of that little disk icon. It's important to realize that the status of the on-off button, as well as the pedal direction definitions at the top of this registration sequence display window, are not actually saved to the registration bank file. That's why they appear above the disk icon and song title in the window. Essentially, everything that is below the disk icon and title will get saved to the registration bank file, but everything that is above will not get saved. The condition of the on-off button is actually a global selection that I must specify on an as-needed basis whenever I want to use my instrument. When I want my pedals to operate as sustain and organ rotary, I should come to this Register Sequence menu display window and make sure that the sequence button is off. When I want to play one or more of my pedal-controlled arrangements that were previously saved to storage as registration bank files, I must remember to come here again and to turn the sequence button on. And since that's what I want to do right now, I will turn it on. So now I tap on the disk icon to save my pedal register sequence to the arrangement file that I previously saved to user memory, the one whose title appears to the left of the little disk drive icon, the Lightly Roll registration bank file. I now must press the Save Here button. And of course it's asking me for a file name, but I want this saved to the same registration file where I saved my arrangement. So I say OK. It asks me to overwrite, which makes sense. I say yes. And that's it. An interesting observation when I return to the main display is how I see the name Lightly Roll. And because when I left the previous window, I left the sequence button on, I now see the sequence 1 through 7 that I just entered and saved. Here it is. This tells me that the pedals can now be used to control the various parts of my performance. If I go back to that registration sequence menu display window and turn the sequence button off, when I come back to the main display, the sequence numbers have disappeared, and the pedals will no longer activate my various register buttons as my arrangement requires. So obviously, if I want to play my arrangement of Lightly Roll with pedal control, I want to see those numbers. And for that to be so, I need to go back and turn on that button in the register sequence menu display. There. Makes sense, doesn't it? So, now I can start playing the song with the assistance of the pedal to change orchestral parts to tempo at the appropriate times. To activate the first part at register number 1, I press my number 1 pedal once. Then I start playing. As an average music hobbyist, being able to play pedal-controlled arrangements in register memory like this allows me to turn rather boring and tedious to listen to level 1 practice pieces into pleasing performances that inspire me to want to practice more and become better. And personally, I believe that this would be advantageous even for advanced musicians for the reason that it would allow them to accomplish many orchestral changes that they otherwise could not. I said earlier that there was another reason for configuring my pedal's global operations before starting to create arrangements in registration memory. If I create and save an arrangement when my global pedal configurations are a particular set of operations, but then at a later time I change those global operations for something else that I prefer, and then if after that I create a new song arrangement in registration memory, when I later recall each of my song arrangements to play them, each one returns my global pedal configurations back to a different set of operations, to whatever was the case when that particular song arrangement was created. At first, it seemed that my pedal configurations were changing on their own, almost at random. Very confusing. For that reason, I advise to configure your pedals globally for what you want them to do once and for all before you start creating arrangements. And then after that, don't change them. Thus, each of your arrangements will return the pedals to the same configuration. Less confusion that way. Now, some people say that all of this entering of orchestral selections into registration memory is too complicated and tedious. They just want to pick up their instrument and play. Well, I'm not saying that you should never do that. Indeed,
when playing different songs that I have not yet formally orchestrated, that's what I have to do. However, I also realize that when playing in that manner, I'm unable to deliver my best performances. Not only is my orchestral variety more limited, but different sounds don't blend well together. The fact is, unless I do some formal orchestration work, it's just not possible for me to take advantage of even a small fraction of what this fine instrument can really do. And besides, the instrument is called an arranger. Creating arrangements is what it was primarily designed to do. That's why I bought it. Another benefit of creating formal arrangements is the ability to share your music with others. The fact is, even if you did not enter my likely row arrangement along with me into your own instrument, you can still try it out. You can simply download it via the links that I provide in the text description section of this video. You can download both the arrangement register bank file and the sheet music, a PDF file. Now, I know my little arrangement is no big deal. It's something that perhaps only beginning piano students would want to play. But by downloading it and trying it out on your own instrument, you can confirm that you understand the process, and perhaps you'll consider using registration memory yourself for creating your own arrangements. Also, by publishing my arrangement as a free download, I hope to encourage other music hobbyists to do the same. Thus, we can become a community that supports each other in our learning of music, as well as our mastery of the features of this wonderful instrument. And after posting this video to YouTube, it's my plan to upload several more beginner-level performances complete with free downloads for both the arrangement register bank file and the sheet music PDF file. But you don't have to limit yourself to my student-level arrangements. It turns out that you can purchase for the SX900, as well as other models, songbooks that come with a USB flash drive containing registration bank files with all of the arrangement work done for you by a professional orchestrator. Here's one example by a gentleman, John Beesley. You simply plug the USB flash drive into your instrument, pick the song you wish to play, open the book to the appropriate page for the sheet music, and play using a pedal to enjoy all of the arrangement's orchestral variety. And the sounds that these arrangements produce are truly spectacular. Another source of such material is strawberries. I provide links to both these sources of such material in the text description section below. The target skill level for such material is typically intermediate. In my case, since I'm only beginner level, this book by John Beesley represents an inspiration to one day achieve intermediate skill level. I've already started practicing the first piece in the book, Ave Maria by Bach. So you see, even if you don't arrange your own performances, knowing how to use the registration memory feature of your instrument, as I've presented in this video, opens up tremendous opportunities. There's just one last issue that I wish to mention in this video, and I saved it for last. When many keyboard players hear about this idea of arranging in registration memory, they say, "Big deal. You go from 4 orchestral parts in the one-touch system to 8 orchestral parts in the registration memory system. It hardly seems worth the trouble. But hold on here. Although there are only 8 registration buttons on the instrument's front grille, the number of orchestral parts that an arrangement can have is actually unlimited. To accomplish that feat, the instrument uses the concept of multiple registration files. And here's the good part. Using pedal control, the instrument is able to switch from one register bank file to another automatically. Remember back in the registration sequence display window, the specification for stop, top, or next? Well, that's what the next specification is for. when in a performance the pedal reaches the last register location in one register bank file, the next specification tells it to open up the next file and start at the first register location in that bank. Pretty neat, don't you think? It turns out that arrangements consisting of 20 to 30 parts are not only possible, but common. This concept is used often in John Beesley's work. I watched very carefully his performance of Pirates of the Caribbean on the Tyros 5, and I counted 23 parts. Well, this has been a really long video, hasn't it? And if you're still with me, kudos to you for your enthusiasm for playing an electronic arranger. They've been around for a while, but it's taken a long time for many musicians and music hobbyists to actually take advantage of their arranger feature. Most people play them in a more interactive manner, using perhaps the one-touch feature. Well, I hope this video has convinced you of the many things that you stand to gain by formally arranging your performances. Don't forget to check out the links that I provide below in the text description section. And if you are like me, a beginner-level music hobbyist wanting to learn how to take advantage of the many features of such instruments to enhance your music, why not subscribe to this channel and ring the bell to be notified each time a new arranged performance with free download is posted. I wish you success with your music.